Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is my partner, Jennifer Wilson. And then we have a guest today. Kristin Murray is the managing shareholder at Weinstein Spira in Texas, and she is here today to share their journey on creating groups to help the candidates in her firm pass the CPA exam. And so she's going to share a little bit about their story of, how and why they formed the group, how it's structured, some lessons learned. And, as we've been talking about on these HR huddles, and we've been talking about, in the profession and at different conferences and events about reducing the pipeline challenge that we have, increasing the opportunities in the pipeline and the number of people coming into the accounting pipeline and into our profession. One of the things that we've been focusing on is the having people then pass the CPA exam. So there's first having them choose accounting as a major and as a degree. And then once they do that in our firms or, in other positions, that they then take the next step to pursue the CPA designation. And there's been studies that were done and found, with the National Pipeline Advisory Group that identified, certain steps and things that we can do inside our firms to make that happen and to have more success. And we think that Kristin has found some secret sauce with her team on that she is willing to share. So, Kristin, I'll just let you do a little bit of introduction, about yourself and the group and why it was formed. Maybe we start there and then we can just, take this conversation further. Thank you for being with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I love talking about this topic because it's one of those things that we tried and we hoped it would work, and we're seeing so much, great output from it that it's kind of a fun topic to talk about. So, like you kind of teed up there, the industry is, not seeing a lot of folks, kind of get to that CPA status. And that was kind of no different for our firm. We're a firm in Houston. We have one office. There's 85 of us. And, the number of folks that were eligible to sit at any one time could be somewhere between, 25 and 40 people, for the younger set. So, what we were kind of noticing, over as the years were passing was that it just seemed like fewer people we were even talking about the exam, let alone sitting it. We were also seeing folks who had gone out and started the exam, and then they were losing their parts, which is just a travesty. If you think how hard you started and you passed the part, and then here 18 months later or whatever, you're losing it. It was just really sad. And so, it came up probably in a retreat with Jen, I think, at some point, like that we were having this kind of pipeline problem. And so what we ended up doing was kicking it back to our learning committee, which was already an established group of folks who were looking at ways to, continue to develop our people. But we said, hey, we have this problem, kind of go grab in a few more people if you need to, younger folks, and talk about why is nobody sitting for this? Because we really weren't sure. We're like, if this is your life's work, why wouldn't you want to be a CPA? And so what we learned from our youngest folks is that it was a time thing. They didn't think they had enough time, or they didn't want to study on their own time. And then they weren't sure that we valued it either. It was kind of interesting. And so, they went off and, took the group and kind of brainstormed through these challenges and came back with a proposal. And that's how we kind of started the group. And we started off as a pilot program, like we do everything in our firm. So we can always tweak it and change it when you call it a pilot program, right? So, and so the time was the huge challenge, the first big challenge. And so from there, we were working on trying to make it an exciting thing and get people's attention. So the two big things we did were, first, we put a $10,000 bonus on passing the exam, which was really meant to be like the carrot, the thing that said, oh, wow, at least come look at our program. And, that's exciting, right? And then the second thing we did is we said, we're going to find time in your workday and give it to you on the clock to help you. Not that it's going to be your all, time. It could be, I guess, if you're super good at studying, but we're going to give you some time back in your day. And so you can do it on the clock and you can decide when you do it. And so we've done that, and we're at the 2-year mark now, and it's been really, really well received.
Awesome. I love this subject, Kristin, because, the idea of people not engaging in and taking and then passing the CPA exam came up at probably more than one retreat, and we talked about how to problem solve it. And so when your learning group took it, they took it and ran with it. And, we'll talk a little bit about some of the success that you've seen. But before we do that, I just want to, I want to talk a little bit about the community. I want to ask you to share sort of your CPA exam shepherd and the community that's been built, and sort of the Weinstein Spira CPA exam community, but the community itself that has sort of morphed and taken on its own life. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the feeling I'm part of something.
Sure. So, I think like anything, when you go home and you crack open the book and you're sitting there by yourself, you feel like the lone wolf kind of thing. Like, I'm in this by myself. And so what kind of setting out this whole idea with study time in the office and the idea that like, hey, this is exciting and we all want to pass it now, was that it kind of grew into folks that said, hey, I want to know what you're studying for. And maybe we'll all study for the same part at the same time. Or, hey, I just heard that girl passed FAR. I want to go find out what she can tell me about FAR. And so they all, right now I can tell you in our firm, everybody knows when everybody's sitting and everybody knows when everybody's getting the results. And they're texting like mad fools when they find out, like, oh gosh, so-and-so passed and so-and-so passed. And it's really, so it kind of kept reinforcing itself, like they themselves. And we tried to also give them opportunities if they wanted to. We would support them in like a study group. So we said, if you want us to bring in some meals, we'll bring in some meals. If you want us to come sit with you and stay in the office, we'll stay in the office. You want us to keep the lights on, we keep the lights on. If you want to be here. So we tried doing that. What I'd say is people still want to have their timetable. So that doesn't always work. But they did grow into a community of people who support each other and really encourage each other. And I'll tell you, everybody high fives everybody once they hear somebody's passed something. So it's really kind of like a reinforcing, lovely way that people are with each other in the firm.
I love that. So talk a little bit about some of the success. I mean, some of the, it doesn't have to be exact numbers, but rough numbers of what you've seen in terms of folks that, because you went quite a while without really anybody taking or passing, and then you did this and suddenly saw some people get through.
Yes, no, exactly. So a couple of things, we probably have had 8 folks completely pass the exam. So that's and the program is just coming up on 2 years. So 8 folks completely through the program. We probably have another 8 or so folks that are through onto their third part, waiting for test results from their third part. And then just, various in-betweens there. And I'll tell you, the really amazing thing is, we made a level in a firm, we made the decision to allow managers without CPA. And everybody said, folks won't sit. Once you make them manager and they don't have their CPA, they won't sit because they'll just feel on it. We've had our first CPA, non-CPA manager promote. She just passed the exam. We have one that is one part away. And so these are people who people said would never sit for the exam once we promoted them. I'm telling you, if it's really your life's work and the energy is behind it, you'll do it. And I think that sense of community and seeing other people do it just encourage them to say, well, shoot, if he can do it, I can do it too. And that's what they're doing. Amazing. And it just kind of, people come in now and they're studying before you get here, because we're like, if you can pass part of it before you get here, we're still going to pay you the $10,000. So come on board and get it done.
Yeah. How do you create the, or identify, I guess, the shepherds? Who's leading these groups? Who's working with them? And how does that fit into like your regular career advisors or career coaches? Like, how is that integrated and communicated? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So really everybody's kind of find their people, I guess is what I'd say. Like, there's no one person who is the shepherd for everybody. Everybody does have a coach, and kind of through scheduling, that coach speaks to protecting that person's schedule. So like, here's like one of the big crux of this program is that if you are actively studying for the exam, you will get 2 hours a day when we are not fully engaged to study on the clock at a minimum. So those people come into the scheduling meeting and say, hey, my guy's studying. He's got an exam on, December the 1st. So we immediately take 10 hours off their schedule for the week and say, you're not going to have to. So there's that level. And then just within the group themselves, they find their own people to help them. So whoever they feel comfortable going to get help from, and I have to say, everybody has been super amenable to helping other folks. Like once they've made it through, it's almost like a badge. I want to help you also because now I know how to do it, kind of thing. And so, and then the learning committee itself has folks on there that, like if you need help with licensure, getting ready for the exam or figuring out how to register. I mean, we have all those Q&As, but there are people there who will sit there and help you also with that process. And then we do have one woman within the firm who just keeps checking in. Are you scheduled for an exam? Please tell me how you've done. When are you getting your results? Just so we can help them along as well and make sure that we're encouraging them as they go.
Well, I think that.
And so everybody gets the be unstoppable Jen term. Once I hear they've passed an exam, I'm like, go.
Yeah. Well, and it speaks to what you said was one of their initial feedbacks was weren't sure it was important to you, which I'm sure you were probably like, what? Of course it is, but we just assume it is. We didn't communicate it. And the way you're following up and checking in and celebrating and connecting people and paying, when they pass it, all of those things combined demonstrate, hey, we really value this and we recognize both the effort and the accomplishment of it, when they produce those results. That's huge.
Tamera, I want to acknowledge that there's this fine line between like pressuring people to do it and encouraging people to do it, right? And what Weinstein Spira has been doing is the encouraging side, right? And so there wasn't this like, you have to do it or you can never be a manager. When they removed that sort of ceiling of pressure that was placed there. And I live in the world that believes that some people might not have taken it with the ceiling in place. When you remove the ceiling, then they didn't have any excuse. They no longer the man holding them down. If they, they could just say, okay, I'm going to take it. And I think it's super interesting. We can have this celebratory and how can I help you? And let's be unstoppable mindset, which is encouraging. It does have some peer pressure. That's the truth, that you would see other people passing and you're thinking, man, why am I not doing that? And I need to put a little more effort in, or I need to sign up. But that's what I think, great leadership is it's encouraging and holding up role models and showing you what's possible. And then if people don't want to sit, they don't have to sit and they can still be very successful at the firm, So I worry sometimes that some firms come from, if you don't pass, you can't get promoted. And if you don't pass, you're not as good as the people who, have their designation. And we get this kind of bias and I don't know, the haves and have nots and all that business, none of which is healthy. And so I just love the way that you're managing this in the culture of the firm, Kristin.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And it's, it's important to note like where we are in the whole environment is like, one of the other things we've done is hired, untraditional hires. And so they might not be eligible to sit for the CPA exam. And there's no stigma to that. Like, or we might have a couple of kids that are young and out of school and they're like, I'm not sure yet. Like, and again, it's okay. We've had a few come forward and say, I'd rather be an enrolled agent. Can I do that? And we're like, go for it. Like if CPA is not going to be your thing, you can still be super valuable to us. Yes, we're encouraging, we're paying, we're giving you time, but at the end of the day, if that's not your gig, I can't force it to be your gig. I can't force you to go take the test. And so really that the peer pressure is just what they feel because we're not like I said, we're saying yes to the enrolled agent. We're saying, fine, you're not ready. It's okay. We understand.
Well, and it's a healthy peer pressure. It's a healthy, excited opportunity. If you can do it, I can do it. Tell me how. Let's share those tips with each other. I wonder, Kristin, if you had some objections when you were first forming this pilot, maybe from some of the partner group, about we're going to give 10 hours a week, really, of time, and then we're going to give $10,000 on top of that. What were the objections, that you had to overcome as you implemented this pilot? And, now you've got the success on the back end 2 years, in, right? But is there anything you can speak to about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd say the $10,000 wasn't an objection, but Jen can attest to, like, I browbeat my partners all the time. And so they're used to me coming to them with some crazy idea, but the money wasn't a thing. So that one wasn't for us. That was, people said, okay, yeah, good, sure, go for it. We had at one point given away some money, but it was pretty nominal. And so, at the end of the day, like, that wasn't going to get anybody jazzed. And I just said, if we're going to make a splash about this, let's make it, a number that sounds good. So that one wasn't. The time, you're right. The time was like, hey, how is this going to work for us? Like, we have work to do. So, and this is where the biggest mistake, I think, can happen. And the messaging has to be right. And I won't say we got it perfect the first time, but you have to be clear that we have a job to do, right? Like, we are a CPA firm. We have clients. Okay. So we have to not neglect them. And at the same time, we also have to realize that we have a body of people, some who have already passed the exam, some who are not interested in the exam, and some who really want to go for the exam. And so when you get to that point in time, you have to say to the partner group, like, we will have some availability, and what we need to do and what we all have to agree to do, which is hard when you have selfish interest, is we have to be willing to let Joe do the job that you wanted Susie to do, because Susie's sitting for the exam and Joe is not. And that's Joe's decision. And so he should get the billable work. It's not a punishment. It's just prioritizing where people are working. And so working through that took a little bit, because people are like, well, she's always been on the job. I want her on the job. Well, you can have her on the job when we get to the time when we're not giving CPA study time. But right now you have to give her the time. And that was the biggest messaging, one, from the employees, like, hey, why can't I study now because we're busy? And then two, shareholders saying, okay, I have to give up certain people to allow them to have the time. So that's, but there is time in every year, and we know this we're busy a lot, but we know we could peel off the time.
Right.
And it's short-lived, right? Once that exam's passed, Susie never gets CPA study time again. So it's really a short-term problem.
I love it. And the thing is, we say this all the time about retention and employee engagement and motivation, but, if they really want something and they feel like we're putting roadblocks up to what they want or what they envision for themselves, then they aren't going to stay with us. So even though they were always on that job every year, they'll be gone. Like, they'll be gone off the job forever if they don't feel like we're giving them that encouragement and that room and that space and that support. And by giving it to them, we sort of get ourselves in a better position to have them on that job or other jobs in the future, because we're showing them we care about what's important to you, and we're going to sometimes be inconvenienced. That's and right. sometimes move things around and sometimes make investments, because we care about you and we want you to care about us back, And so I just think that it's a generous place to stand, Kristin, which of course we always want to shine a big light on generosity. We can all run kind of a mercenary business for sure, and, feed the selfish interests of the entity and feed the selfish interests of the shareholders. But at the end of the day, that's not a talent-rich environment. It's not an attractor and a retainer of talent to be that kind of way. So I love that you have done this, and I know you're refining it. I know you've been playing with it and perfecting it, and the CPA exam takers are helping shape it. I know they have been giving you lots of feedback on the other things that they'd like to see, which is great. And I just think that as many firms as could hear your story and think about trying to emulate it, because even though we've been talking about CPA exam shepherding for a long time, and even though, NPAG, the National Pipeline Advisory Group report, talks about it, a whole chapter on it, seeing it in action.
Sure.
And I've been amazed by what you've accomplished in 2 years.
Yeah.
Just the sheer momentum that you can feel with your team members. That sort of energy that is going to go way further than just getting exam passed.
Yeah.
Camaraderie, those relationships, just awesome. Super great.
What other lessons learned or anything that you would advise any firm leaders or HR professionals listening today if they're thinking about starting this up?
So one of the things that we realized early on was that it wasn't enough to say, I'm going to study for the CPA exam. So like to get the hours, you have to have an exam date set. So that gives them a target. It also gives us the feeling that they're actually working towards that target. Now, that said, if something happens, can they move that date? Obviously, we're not going to be like, no, you think you need another 2 weeks and you're going to go sit for that exam. You told us it was going to be the 12th, but it does make it definitive for them. It gives them what they're kind of give their kind of timeline, and it gives us the comfort that they didn't say they just wanted to study and that they weren't studying. And so, we can follow up with them. And when they were super honest with me. I'd sent them a survey, a number of months back just to say, hey, tell me how you're doing. Tell me, how many times you passed or failed something. And I always share with people, like, I didn't pass this thing on the first try, so I don't expect, I think that's you're just an overachiever at that point, so, and they were super like, hey, it took me, I got most of them on the first try, but that last one or that middle one took me like 3 times. And that was okay. Like, just because we gave you the time, you don't pass it. We got it. We've been there. We're all human. And sometimes one topic is easier than another. And so, but they were really gracious and they were sharing that with me. And what they did is they just went back to the well and talked to the person and said, the sims were horrible. What did you do to practice the sims? I know that's where I bombed it. And it was so good because somebody came up and said, here's how I got through it. And so, and they did, we had one to lose 2 sections if she couldn't pass 2 more sections in 2 months. And she did it. She got through it. So it's working.
That's a lot of grace that you offer, which is awesome. And everybody, one size fits one, Kristin, is the other thing I've been hearing throughout this discussion, is that you really apply it to each individual, meeting them where they're at and where they are today. And then that can change in the future, which is, bringing them along. It's awesome. Really great. Any other last words of wisdom?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
No, I think I've given you what I got so far. There's maybe one day there'll be some other tidbits, but that's what we've learned so far.
Well, we will circle back and we will, maybe we'll need to jump on again in a future HR huddle. And we really appreciate you coming and sharing what you and your team have done and the success of it and some of these lessons learned. Thank you so much. We do think it's an incredible way to help, create that engagement, with our team members in general, and then also to pass the CPA exam. And so we just think this is such an important initiative. Thank you for coming and sharing it with us. And we will see everybody else on the next HR Huddle.
No, loved it.
With us. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.